Hi, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals and we invite people on to help us. And today we're focusing on the long life portion, which does not preclude financial independence. But Dawn Renee is the minister and co founder, and she's an energy doula. She's a holistic caregiver. And she spent most of her life struggling to understand the triggers and internal misalignments in her body, mind, and spirit that were causing her to call her to experience a system collapse that with all kinds of health related issues. She was bedridden for 30 days. And when she recovered and was able to stand again, became her mission to share her message of love, spirit, miracle healing, and how becoming a caregiver give her of herself, you can tell I'm reading, showed her a new path to living in joy. Awesome. Thanks, Dawn, for being with us today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. I love that you're doing this.
I am so excited about your path, your mission. Tell us about what led up to your, 2010 illness. And
Well, I had spent a number of years trying to diagnose and figure out what was wrong with me. I've been to many doctors since the age of like 12. And because I had started getting Epstein Barr and mono when I was 12 years old. And since that time, I had autoimmune issues, and it just seemed like it just kept compounding. Things kept compounding. And in 2010, I had just started working with a nutritional person who had 22 years of experience. And so she was trying to help me understand what was going on with my body. And at that time when I fell, I was actually working and rehabilitating a dog, and I was on the ground with the dog, and all of a sudden I had these sharp pains in my right side, and I fell to the floor, and I couldn't pick myself back up again. Everything in me, my whole body had shut down. I couldn't lift myself. I had no energy. I was having these sharp pains in my side. And it was just, I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I've reached the point where this is it. I'm going to have to go to bed now, and who knows what's going to happen to me.
wow.
And the doctors don't know what's wrong with me. And so I had just gotten married, and my husband had to pick me up and carry me to the bed. And I went to the bed and I laid there and was struggling with the fact that I couldn't lift myself, struggling with the fact that I couldn't basically do anything. I kept trying to do work on the computer, thinking, okay, I'll just do more research. I'll figure out what's going on with myself and fix it. But even that I didn't have the energy for. And so it ended up that I just surrendered. And it was when I surrendered that I gave myself permission to rest. I gave myself permission to just say, you know what? I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. I'm going to give it all up, and just, what do I have to work with at this moment in time? And all I have is, I just really want to sleep. I feel like I'm so exhausted. I should just sleep. And so I did. I gave myself permission, and for the next 30 days, every single day I would wake up and I would try to lift myself out of the bed. And every day I was not able to, but I would still give myself that permission. Okay, I still need rest. I'm just going to lay back down and go back to sleep. And my husband took care of me. Thank goodness he didn't leave me. We'd only been married for a think a week, maybe even just
God.
a few days.
Wow.
And so
Hey, surprise, honey.
here you are. You get to take care of me. Aren't you lucky? And so, yeah, he did that, and we decided to do everything different. I decided to change everything at that moment in time because nothing was working. I was not excited about food. Food to me was the enemy. I didn't want to deal with any more of that. So I would rather just fast and not eat. What I ended up doing though is I had 2 shakes a day and 3 teas a day. He would make me these 2 really big shakes, and I would have those. It would take me probably an hour and a half just to eat the shake because I really didn't have that much of an appetite. And I did that for 30 days. And they were green shakes. They had, vegetables and and a grapefruit in it, and a green apple in it, and a lemon and a lime, but mostly kale, cucumber, spinach, and cilantro. And,
Wow.
it took some getting used to, but I did it. And for 30 days, I actually started craving it towards the end. And on the 30th day, I was able to put my feet on the ground and lift my body up. I walk out into the living room, and my husband looks at me and he says, "Wait a minute, shouldn't you be in bed?" And I said, "No, no, no, I'm up now. I think I'm up now. This is it. I'm ready to be out of that bed."
Yeah.
And I decided that in that time frame of learning how to caregive for myself, because that's what it is. I had a lot of time to think and a lot of time to just surrender to the only thing that I was really given to worry about, which was myself. I was born to this body. So the only thing that I was truly supposed to figure it out was with me. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do with this now that I'm figuring out that I have to caregive for me? Yes, I have my husband kind of stepping in to be a caregiver every once in a while, but I had to learn how to caregive for myself if I was going to try to get more for myself. And on that 30th day, it was just, I couldn't believe it that I could stand up and walk. And I walk out to him and I said, "No, we're not looking back now. Now I need to figure out how to help others figure out how to find their own caregiver within." And that's what this journey for me has been, is it's been as much as caregiving for others as it has been learning how to caregive for myself so that I can be the best caregiver for me. So I don't need to be caregiving for as much because I've found that for myself.
Yeah.
And little did I know that the journey was just getting started, that here I was caregiving for myself, and I got myself out of that bed and I started walking on this path of working at a holistic shop, to where people would come in every single day and we'd spend an hour and a half with them and go through all of their scenarios of what they felt they were lacking or deficient in, or what they were struggling with, and how could we get them more energy, get them more, because that's what it all boils down to, is how do we get more energy within ourselves so that we
Right.
can effectively have more coming out of us to keep filling us more with the abundance.
Yeah.
And so the health was all tied to all of it. It's tied to all aspects of your abundance, of whether or not you're caregiving for yourself. And so yeah, getting out of that and starting to help people in a more in a situation where people were coming to us in a store, and we would sit there and go through all of their stuff for an hour and a half and try to figure out, put a light on the things that we saw that maybe they weren't seeing at that moment in time, and just help them find it for themselves, and then watch how that would transform over the next few months. And it just all started with that, with being a caregiver for myself. It's
When you
crazy.
look back, what do you think was um, the biggest thing that kind of caused all these other symptoms? And was there one like catalyst that you think just sort of blew it all up? Or
It's funny now looking at the whole journey where I'm at right now, looking back at it. I was not in alignment with myself my whole life. There's a lot of stories we're told while we're growing up. A lot of limitations are thrown at us. A lot of things. Oh, you can't do this, and oh, you can't do that, and oh, yeah, you can do that, but it's probably going to take this. And here's a story that goes along with that.
right.
And so, from the time I was a child, I was growing up thinking that I was limited to what was in my purview, what was, here and with me right now, not knowing that inside of me, that if I activated that thing inside of me and constantly just would feed the joy, then the joy would become an abundant fountain of everything, and that it would just keep giving back to me. And you could look at the misalignment from the stories that you're told as children, and it's nobody's fault. It's not
Right.
our parents. It's not it's not, oh, my parents didn't teach me this, or I didn't learn that. They weren't taught. None of
Exactly.
us
They
were
didn't
taught.
know. They weren't keeping a secret from you, right?
No, it's not like, and it's not like they were trying to hold me back from gaining these things. They were legitimately in coming from a fearful position because of what their experiences were.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, if you do this, then oh, you might experience that, and I don't know if I can witness that.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden you're dealing with the limitations of the people that you're looking for encouragement from, and support. And what I and I tell you this now, I've been married 13 years, but I've been with my husband for 16, and just realized on our 13th anniversary, which is just a few weeks ago, which ironically was 13 years past since me falling and being on the floor, is that in order for me to learn how to love myself truly, I had to see myself. And I wasn't until I met my husband. I saw myself in him. And that meant all of the shadows and all of the light and all of those pieces and all of those little things along the way that triggered all of those things that I thought were against me was just really me being against me. It was really me holding myself back. And so now I look at it and go, oh my gosh, I just was needing to find myself this whole time. I was seeking outside of myself for the answers. I was seeking outside of myself for a doctor to tell me what was wrong with me. I was seeking outside of myself to get more, but not realizing that I had so much inside of me that if I just focused on the stuff that made me who I was and the stuff that brought me joy, then that stuff was going to be the fuel for all of the abundance.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing to, because some people will say, oh, you're a Pollyanna, you're so positive. I remember when I was a kid, I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, it's a great day. I'm like so excited. And my friends would look at me like, Dawn, it's 8 o'clock in the morning and none of us are awake yet. And I'm like, but okay, but okay, I'll wait. And so, you kind of have to you subdue that little thing that pushes that thing forward of that. I don't know what that little thing was. It's not that I wasn't facing the dark. It's that I already went through some of the dark stuff and saw the only light stuff now. And all I want to see is the light. Right. And yes, I've gone through the dark. And yes, a lot of us are going through dark stuff right now. I mean, and it seems like the same energy is happening, just different stories for different people, but it's the same sort of energy that's coming in. And it doesn't mean that we don't go through darkness. It doesn't mean that I haven't been through some horrific, terrifying, traumatic experiences just like somebody else has. It just means that I'm not willing to live in a place of stewing on that anymore. Exactly. I'm ready to just walk away. So if I was to look back at everything, it was finding myself and finding the pieces of me that I'm overjoyed with. And how can I bring that out to the world? What does that look like? And how do I keep tweaking that to give more of that? And the more I do that, the more abundance comes in. It's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So when you were doing your caregiving to others, why did you choose ALS or did it sort of choose you?
Oh my gosh. I feel like this whole path is somehow scripted, or the synchronicities. There's going to be a book at some point because I can't deny all of the signs and synchronicities that have happened and the stuff that brought me to ALS. So after I got well, my husband and I started our duo. And so we came out as a musical duo in 2012, and we started singing about our journey. And in 2012, I met this couple. It was at one of our first gigs. And from the back of the room, the woman screams that she's from Nova Scotia when I'm talking about the fact that my husband's from Canada. And she's like, I'm from Nova Scotia. So anyway, we end up having a conversation with these people for an hour and a half after the show. And we don't think anything. We talk oh yeah, we'll meet up again. But a few years go by. It's now 2014. So that's 2 years after we've met them. 2 years later, we're challenged with the Ice Bucket Challenge in July of 2014. And both of us looked at each other like, what is this? ALS. I hadn't heard of it really. I didn't know much about it, but yeah. I've been doing holistic healing and working with people and trying to intuitively help people find their energy. How do you find your energy? Yeah. And so I said, wow, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody came into our life that had ALS? And I said, that would be really interesting. And what would we do with that what kind of journey would that be? And it was just a thought. Gosh, you got to be careful with your words and your thoughts and you're speaking them. Just be careful, because 6 months later, literally 6 months later, we were at a gig, and it was an hour outside of Nashville. And the husband to that wife was being called by the restaurant owner that owned the restaurant that we were playing at. because she was like, you've got to come see these people. Now, this husband and wife were also in the music and advertising. And so she thought it would be beneficial for us to meet the husband, that he would come see us. And so we we're like thinking nothing of it. And she keeps texting and calling and texting and calling. And after 11 calls, he says, my wife is in the hospital with ALS. They're saying she's not going to make it. I don't know if I can make it out there. And so she begs him. She's like, please, you have to come. So Anne says to her husband, yes, you should go see these two. I don't know why, but you need to go meet these two. So he gets in the car and he comes out an hour to us. And our show is over now. Our show is over. He shows up, our show is over. And he comes up to Nash and he starts talking to Nash. And Nash says something, and he says, oh, my wife is in the hospital, but I had to come out here tonight. Nash turns and he looks at him and he says, your wife is in the hospital. He throws everything on the ground. They sit down at a table and they start talking. Now, mind you, we don't recognize this man because he's gained so much weight.
Oh.
We don't see him as the person that we met at all.
Yeah.
But there was something very familiar about him. And he's telling us this story. Our show is over. So we spend another hour and a half after our gig is sitting here talking to this man, not realizing we've already met him, not knowing what the future has in store for us, but just really legitimately wanting to understand and very curious as to why this person has come into our life who has ALS.
Yeah.
And so he says, well, why don't you come into the hospital and meet my wife? And we said, absolutely. We want to come in and meet your wife. And I said, while we're doing that and planning that, get me a list of what she's eating, because I want to know what they're giving her, because he was telling me she was having problems with food and everything. So they get me a list and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Ensure, everything you wouldn't want to give an ALS patient, because it's got corn syrup and whey and gluten and dairy and every possibly bad thing that could be bad for somebody who has a neurodegenerative disease. You don't want to give this to them. And so I find another formula. It's holistic, it's organic, and I send it to him. And he gets it ordered, brings it into the doctor, and the doctor sees the prescription and he says, well, why do you want to change? And the doctor looks at her food and he says, oh my gosh, okay, yes, she shouldn't be on that. Here, I approve of this. So they get this new formula in there, and then we come in the next day to the hospital to meet Anne. So we think we're meeting Anne. We go in there and she recognizes us right away. I don't recognize her because she's emaciated. She's like 85 pounds. She looks like a skeleton. It was horrible. And so we start talking to her, and they start talking about the food and all this. And then she types out on her phone, I'm from Nova Scotia.
And you said, ding, ding, ding.
Like the light bulbs just go bing. And I looked at them and I went, oh my gosh, you're from Nova Scotia. And I looked at both of them and I know their story. I know they're alone in the city. I know they don't have any help. And I'm looking at what they're going through right now. And I know that Nash and we're just working for ourselves. So I said, well, we're not doing anything right now if you need help. And they said, oh my gosh, that would be great. Let's work something out. Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, let's do this. And so we started to plan, okay, well, I'll start coming over as soon as she's released from the hospital. But until then, they're going to rehab her here for like a month and a half. They're rehabbing her at this rehab facility. They got her back to sitting on the edge of the bed. They got her to walking with the food that she was on, with this new food.
Yeah.
Because she did so well on this new food, they introduced that food to the autistic floor, where all the children who had autistic issues were not speaking or communicating or any of that. So they decided to try it on the kids. And it was such a great response that they decided to start adopting it at their hospital as one of their formulas that they give to patients. Yeah, it was so, just the fact that we got called to ALS and that we called to do that. And then to see that this chain of events is starting to happen. It's like, wow, okay, so if that wouldn't have happened, then that wouldn't have happened. And if I wouldn't have allowed for that to happen, it's like, just stay open,
Yeah.
and the signs and the doors open. And it's just about you being called to it. It's funny that you said called to earlier, because I feel like I was called to this whole entire journey. This was not something that I had ever planned. I've been singing music and writing music since I was a child, and that's been what we've been doing. But along the way, I've taken on other things to survive, to do, and to find my joy. The caregiving journey of caregiving for myself is leading me to a caregiving for myself, and then leading a path to showing others how to caregive for themselves, and then also to caregive for others that need caregiving for. Which I just find the whole thing very fascinating. How like the path just keeps unfolding itself if you just get out of your way. Don't try to dictate how it's all going to happen. And then all of a sudden things start happening. So yeah, I felt very called to ALS and to this path. Yeah.
Amazing. So you hear, you're talking about the different things that you ate and that you fed to Anne and stuff. It's all plant-based. Yeah. Is that where, I keep hearing this every time I turn around. Oh, plant-based diet. This is a plant-based, nut milk, whatever. And you're just like, it just becomes like, okay,
A thing.
whatever. But can you just talk a little bit about
Yes.
what's your average like daily diet, or what do you think is important?
So for me, I feel like plant-based diet is living plants, living fruits and vegetables, because they carry a vibration. So for me, getting more energy in my body means looking at all the avenues that I could be taking in energy. Am I taking energy through water? Is the energy in the water, is it from a mountain? Is it from a spring, a well, or is it from tap? Or has it been ultra filtered and then ultra filtered again? And how much life is in the water, and how much life is in the plant? Because that life that's in those things is giving more life to us. And I'm not saying that you should stop eating meat. I've never, that's not what I believe. I believe that people need to do what they're called to do and what their body is feeling more energetically aligned with.
Yeah.
And some people, they need to eat meat, that they find their energy from that. Eat meat that are eating a plant-based diet, but eat meat that is pasture raised and humanely, raised. And because that all matters, because how your plants are being taken care of and how your animals are being taken care of is also an energy that's going to be passed on from the animal or the plant to you. So it's an energy cycle. It's a cycle of energy. The words and everything that we speak and think are all part of our it's all part of our makeup. Every cell in our body requires energy in order to give more energy. So what I learned being in a bed is that I needed to give myself as much energy as I could. And so we did vegetables, so live vegetables. And you can do raw if you want to. Some people don't do well on raw, so they have to have cooked. So you don't have to cook it until it's like all the life is cooked out of it. You can cook it lower. I like to cook things. If I'm doing it cooked, then I cook it in water. And so that it's kind of a steamed, but not boiled, I'm not boiling it. More like I'll put a few inches of water in the bottom of the pan instead of butter, and some people need the butter, so have the butter if you need the butter. But get yourself some good pasture raised butter, because those cows have been eating good things, and aren't being fed hormones and antibiotics. So yeah, it's just about being more conscious about what you're putting in your body. Now you can take it to the level of the grocery store where they're saying everything is plant-based. And yes, you can tell me that that gluten is plant-based.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It comes from a plant. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for you. Because what's happened with gluten in America is that they've processed it so much that they've now turned it into glue.
Yeah.
So
we put the glue back in gluten.
That's right. We put the glue back in gluten. So if you really want to make your own breads and you really want to have a bread or you want to have pastas, I recommend making it yourself and getting a good source of flours to use. I myself like to use coconut and almond, and I do the gluten free because I don't need any more glue in my body. My body is rejecting glue. and honestly, when I was in the bed during those 30 days, one of the things that put me in that bed was because I had discovered that I had a gluten intolerance. And so I had switched from gluten free, or had from gluten products to gluten-free products. All I was eating was gluten-free products. So I went to the store and everything on the shelf had to be gluten-free. Right. And so I'm like, oh, it's gluten-free. I can eat that. Oh, it's gluten-free. Oh, I can eat
Potato
that.
chips, no gluten. Excellent.
No gluten in that. Oh, forget about the saturated fats. Oh,
Right,
and,
exactly.
don't worry about those burnt oils. That's not carcinogenic. It's just, and I guess when I went to go help a person with ALS, and she gave me the rite of passage to just do whatever we needed to do in her alternative holistic care, because the doctors had given up on her. They told her she wasn't going to make it a week, let alone 6 months. And we went 7 years together.
Wow.
And the reason we went 7 years is because I feel like it was because I learned how to listen to myself. Therefore, I learned how to listen to her. So because I could trust my own intuition, I could hear what she was saying because she couldn't speak to me anymore. She had to talk through a computer or through texting. And, eventually she had to talk through her eyes. And so there's, you just learn that listening to your body, if you pick up a fruit and you ask yourself, this is going to be so good for me and it feels really good for me, and you really believe that, then it's going to be really good for you.
Yeah.
In the same respect, I can tell you right now, honestly, you could probably pick up a can of raviolis and say the same things to yourself if you really want to believe it. I happen to have a personal story where my husband's great uncle, he had cancer 3 times and beat it twice on a can of raviolis and gin. And I really believe it was because of his mindset, because he did not believe that it was going to take him down. Plus, he didn't overeat. He didn't eat a lot of things. He really didn't. And so I think that the body was never really truly just bogged down, and he was able to keep healing himself with his mindset.
Yeah.
The 3rd time, not so much, but and that's a long-winded definition of plant-based, but I think it all comes back down to the energy that you're trying to give to your body. And so ask yourself, is a box of stuff going to bring me energy or is it going to weigh me down?
Right. Right.
And that's kind of how I transitioned from eating the way I was eating to now how I'm eating now. And now it's just take the time, make my meals, prepare, put a little bit of effort into yourself. You know why? Because that's why you were put here, is to put the effort into yourself first. But we keep reaching outside of ourselves to get more.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I think it's easier to blame someone else if things don't go well.
It's a lot easier.
So it's like, oh, the doctors really let me down. It's not me. It has nothing to do with anything I did wrong.
No, I know. And and here it is. Here's the other part. This brings up a really good point that you're bringing up right now, is my family or friends that are going through stuff that's really hard and they're struggling through things, and I want to help them. And I try to help them, but they're not in a place for that help. Right. And so I had to learn as a caregiver that the only person that I need a caregiver for, really, truthfully, is myself. And that by doing that, if somebody comes along and sees how I'm doing this for myself and they say, hey, how are you doing that? Because I need a little bit of, maybe you can illuminate something for me that I'm missing and I can find it for myself. Yeah. Okay, great. I'll do that for you. I don't want to come in and tell you how to do things, because I don't think that anybody should. I think you should define that for yourself, and that we're all just here as examples of things that, possibilities, probabilities, that there's no when, even in science, everything is a probability, because there are so many variations, and you can't tell me that you can you'd have to do a closed study where every person was born and raised exactly the same way.
Right.
in the exact same
By the same
scenario,
family.
by the same
Right.
family, eating and drinking the same things.
Right.
And they'd have to be in a bubble for like 20, 30 years to tell me that you're getting the exact results you're getting. Because the way I see it, it's all probabilities. And
Absolutely.
and we're just going on averages. Well, it's kind of in this mark right here. So I'm going to try this and try this to find balance for myself.
Yeah.
And so listening to ourselves is where I feel the answers come back, is where we go, oh, that really didn't feel that good having what I just ate or drank or
Yeah.
said or thought. And so what do? You have to stop and say, okay, well, I can stop it right now. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
What does that look like if I change it right now? And that's
That
all I've
takes
been
some
doing.
bravery, right? It takes some strength because people are that this is what I've always done. What happens if I totally change?
Well, yeah, I was even literally giving people my recipe for what I did when I healed, because that's just what I chose to do. I chose to quit everything cold turkey and go down a path, like a complete different path than what I was going, because it wasn't working. And it was scary. And I chose to take the time that it took. And that's what it was. I gave myself permission to write my own story with it and say, you know what? These people around me that keep telling me this is what I should be experiencing and this is how I'm going to experience it. I think I'm just going to push all that out right now because it's all outside. That's their projections of how they're fearful of their own stuff and they're putting it on me.
Exactly.
And I'm just going to accept that.
Yeah. So I saw on your website that you had a recipe book. How long did it take to put that together? Because I can imagine
Oh boy.
doing each recipe, coming up with perfecting each recipe. I thought it would take a lifetime.
I honestly do feel like it has been a lifetime. So those recipes I've literally been working on since 2010. And everybody keeps saying, I have another book that's coming out. I can't say the name of it yet because it's going to be, I really love the name of it though, but it's going to be really great. It's going to feature, American style foods, vegan, basically
Okay.
just the way I have translated it for myself now to stay in plant-based.
Mhm.
And this one though, with the sweet potato vegan, the reason I wanted to do it first is because sweet potatoes have replaced my meat. So they are
They're
my meat.
awesome.
I don't eat meat. I eat sweet potatoes. And I love them so much. And I feel like they're the one constant thing that I could keep in my life that made me feel full, that took care of all of my needs and brought me so much joy that my body didn't hurt anymore. My body has stopped hurting to
Wow.
where I have more, I can manage it now more. Now I know if my body's hurting, it's probably because I got too much sugar that day or because I got too much oil. And I don't eat a whole lot of oil, but every once in a while, I like to have something with some kind of oil on it. I do eat avocados every day. I love avocados.
I love avocados. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I have my like routine things that I feel are like my staples that I have to have in my day.
Yeah.
But the sweet potato vegan, it's literally taken me since 2010. And I was blessed because the last year that Anne that was here, my I guess he was my foster. He was like a foster brother to me. He came and he was with us when we were kids, and then he came to Tennessee, was passing through and stayed with us for about 9 months. And he just happened to be a chef. So he helped me elevate my recipes to make sure that they were that I covered all the bases,
Yeah.
And so he just kind of put the icing on all of them, as we'll say. And then he gave me a couple of new ones. There's a recipe in there for cranberry relish or cranberry ketchup, which is yeah, it's ketchup. It tastes like ketchup, but it's made from cranberries.
Wow.
And
Sounds good.
it's so good. And that's because I try to avoid tomatoes. So he wanted to give me something that could replace my ketchup. So he made me cranberry ketchup, which
Fun.
ironically goes great with sweet potatoes. So yeah, we've got the sweet potato recipe book, and that is by donation only. It's to support my ministry. So, which is the ministry of um, advocating for caregivers, the caregiver within, and helping people find the caregiver within. And I'm still helping with people that need help. Basically, I'll help anybody who calls me. I'm not afraid to. If somebody really wants help, I'm not the kind of person that's going to set up programs and have you be part of a program.
Yeah.
It's more like, if you want my help, I'm here. I'll hold your hand, but I'm not diving in the rabbit hole with you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It doesn't help anybody.
no, doesn't help. It doesn't, it didn't help trying to set up programs in the past, because people fall off their programs. The only thing that worked for me was to continue just trying to do better for myself, because I wanted to feel happy inside and joy.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so now that the pains are finally manageable, which, during that time that I was in the bed, having all of those issues kind of creep up on me at the same time, with the Lyme, the autoimmune, the Epstein, the diabetes, the endometriosis, all of that stuff is all in remission right now. I have everything managed right now, so that
Amazing.
so I feel like every day I can wake up and go, okay, where's my starting place today? And I'm still making progress. I don't feel like I'm declining. I feel like there's progress being made. And that's basically how we approached every single day for the 7 years with Anne on our journey, was, where are we at today and what do we have to work with, and
Yeah.
how can we bring joy to your life with what we have?
Yeah.
And that's all that we can do. I feel that's our whole mission. And even as I watched this person be left literally with just her mind, she didn't let that take her.
Yeah.
She let that be the thing that freed her. Her mind freed her. And I watched her. She showed me so many examples of that. And it was a beautiful and tragic and traumatic thing to go through all at the same time. But I feel like you had to have all of it to kind of push that cream to the top,
Yeah.
So that we could find out all these little morsels. And the only thing that I feel that as a society we need to really work on is, one, caregiving for ourselves, and two, if we're caregiving for others, to be mindful of and listen to them, even if they can't speak.
Yeah.
Because so many times we would go into the emergency room, and the emergency room technicians do not understand how to handle a chronically ill patient.
Right.
There needs to be protocols that kind of had been set up. Here's some things to look out for if you have an ALS patient or an MS patient. Here's some things that you want to make sure. Don't use the sponge in their mouth if they have involuntary lockjaw. I mean, don't let their hand hang off the side of the bed if you just took blood from them and forgot to put the Band-Aid on, because they can't put their arm back on their body.
Oh my
So
God.
so it's just, yeah, I mean, these are situations that actually happened, and I don't hold anything against the establishment. I feel that as a society, we need to stop and listen to ourselves so that we can listen to what's happening in front of us without words.
Yeah.
Because it's there. All the information is there, and we don't have to have definition with words all the time.
Right. You just tune in.
When you go to before you do chest compressions, you're supposed to stop, listen, and feel, right? But when you're dealing with somebody with ALS, there's an element of choking that might happen because they're dealing with secretions. And so that's a protocol. These are all things that need to be, that if that the personnel was trained, then they would look for it, and then they would be more aware and more mindful.
Yeah.
So I feel like those are the things that as a society we could fill our cups and have more abundance if we would just stop and listen more to what's going on instead of trying to rush through the process.
Yeah, it's true. Absolutely. So Dawn, I feel like, there's more stuff I wanted to talk to you about, but we're kind of getting to the end. So will you just tell people where they can reach you, or what's the best way to connect with you? We're going to put all this in the show notes, but where would you tell people to start? if they want to connect with you?
If you want to connect with me, and if you need an advocate, if you need an advocate for yourself, if you need an advocate for a patient, if you if you're just looking to run some ideas past somebody, you want to brainstorm, whatever it is, and you just need you need to vent, you can reach me on Instagram, on Facebook at Traveling Caregivers. You can go to my website. I have a place there that you can send a contact to me. They all go to me. So just send it to me at Dawn at Traveling Caregivers, or go to the website travelingcaregivers.com and fill out the contact form. You can also find us at Dawn Loves Nash. That's our music ministry. So that's where we're taking our music now. And because that's another component. We're using our music, and I'm finding our music is helping a lot of people through the healing process. A lot of our songs were written during this caregiving journey. So a lot of it speaks to finding that inner voice and bringing it out, and just standing in your power and in your truth, so that you
I feel like there's nothing, for me, nothing brings me joy more quickly if I'm not necessarily feeling joyful than music. It just quickly elevates my mood and my energy level and my vibration. Yeah.
It changes everything. And it's the music is leading the way right now for us. It's kind of actually stepped in and taken over. So it's forcing us to get more in front of people and to sing the music that we've been working on. And then I'm working with people in between those things, and then, doing the best I can. So
fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, you have a huge soul, huge heart. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on here today.
Thanks so much for being here. I know that a lot of people are going to hear this and benefit and feel that they need to, have more of you. So thanks for giving
and if
people
you would
access,
love to have us, if people want to book us too, we're always looking to bring our music somewhere new. So if there's somebody somewhere that you want us to bring the music to, an event, to a benefit, to a festival, to your house, whatever, and you're just going to have friends over, we'll do that too. We've done all of that. And if you like the journey that we're trying to promote with the mission for the caregivers, then donate and get a cookbook, get a recipe book.
Nice.
Or find our music on Spotify or iTunes or any of those digital platforms. You can find us there under Dawn Loves Nash.
Perfect. I love that. Love the name.
Well, I felt like it was a time because we were Tawny River, and we changed our name to Dawn Loves Nash a few years ago. And I felt it was right before COVID happened. And I don't know if I was feeling it or what, but I was just feeling like we needed more love. And we were like, well, let's just be Dawn and Nash. And we said, well, why don't we be Dawn Loves Nash? Because I think the world needs more love. And it was more of saying Dawn loves Nash and Nash loves Dawn. There's a mutual love there. Like I see my love in him and he sees his love, vice versa. We see that love in each other.
Yeah.
And so therefore we can give more of it.
Beautiful. Awesome. Dawn, thanks so much for lighting up our day today. It was great meeting you.
It was so great meeting you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And thanks, listener, for listening. I know that you know somebody who can benefit from hearing Dawn and for connecting with her later. So please share the episode with them so that they can hear her energy and just be healed just from listening to her nice words. Maybe it'll put them on a true plant-based journey and not just something that says plant-based in the store, like gluten-free. And maybe start their path to healing. And be sure to be here next week. Thanks.